It's everywhere you look. It's a huge part of our culture, but us Brits tend to be tight-lipped when it comes to opening up about our personal sex lives. Until now.
I ended up masturbating from like the age of 15.
I just thought sex would solve most issues. It did for a while, until you realise people want way more than just sex.
In this series, we're tackling the subject head on.
I think pornography had set a lot of unrealistic expectations for me of what sex was.
Hugh Hefner used to call it like tits on a stick, and I'm not really built like that.
In this episode, we're confronting the impact that watching pornography has had on some people's lives.
I used pornography to really medicate a lot of the emotions I had towards my childhood, towards the pressures that I was feeling at the time.
No matter what I tried to do, I could not stop watching it. That's when I knew there was something up.
Nothing is off limits.
When I used to watch it morning, noon and night, pretty much, to the point where I was just exhausted.
This is Sex After Porn Obsession. From the ancient Egyptians to the Victorians, from lads' mags to online sex platforms, people have been viewing porn for centuries. It's nothing new, but technology means that porn is now more accessible than ever. Research by UK addiction treatment centres suggests that 8.8 million adults could be watching porn on a weekly basis. These people might look very different, but they all have one thing in common. They all started watching porn from a young age. We've brought them together to discuss how their porn viewing habits developed and how it's impacted their relationships.
So tell us more about your childhood in North Carolina.
It's interesting, I guess, because like America and the South in general is very like religious, and I grew up in like a very religious sort of like area and that kind of upbringing. So that's kind of like what brought me around to like finding porn and stuff like that, was because I was just taught like abstinence and stuff.
Yeah, same.
So that's kind of what brought me into it. It was a Baptist church. My uncle was the youth pastor there. It was very, you know, women have their sort of role. I didn't really grow up necessarily like looking forward to my life. It was like growing up looking forward to my wedding. And I never really wanted to get married, so I didn't really know what else was for me. But it was very much like very strict gender roles that we were sort of expected to live up to.
I wasn't raised in like a really strictly religious environment, but similarly, I guess culturally, you don't really talk about sex like in church with your family. You don't really do that. My parents are Ghanaian. They are very traditional, very cultural, and it's quite a conservative culture as well, so you don't really talk about sex and things like that. So liking boys was something that was kind of like, you're feeling it, but you don't really talk about it. You definitely don't talk to your parents about it. I am a child of West African immigrants, Ghanaian immigrants, so you don't really talk about, Mom, I have a crush on a boy at 11. Read your books, basically, would be the answer.
Life for me was quite interesting. So my father died on Christmas Day when I was 6 years old, and I think I never understood what the loss did for my life at the time. So when I hit puberty, I didn't understand the things that were happening within my body. So I started to have a lot of questions, for sure. I think as any young boy does. The changes that were happening in my body, the girls that I liked at the time, or just what it meant to be a boy / becoming a man. Coming of age in some ways.
I went to an all-boys school, so you could only imagine what it was like. I'll never forget one of the guys in my class, actually, he showed us porn on, do you know PSP?
Yeah.
He downloaded it onto it, and I remember we were
Wow.
watching in the back of class, and I think we were just all quite fascinated, but a lot of the boys were having sex way before me anyway.
Oh, wow.
So I was pretty much quite a late bloomer. I was quite a shy, introverted kid. And I remember for years it was, I used to watch on my computer, made sure before my mum got home, wiped the internet, history.
And this lot aren't alone. In a world where it's increasingly available, some kids have seen porn at younger ages than you might expect. On average, children first see pornography aged 13, according to research. And 1 in 10 of those surveyed have seen porn by the age of 9.
I was 11 years old when I first started watching porn. I was introduced to it by a friend of mine that I used to walk to school with every single morning. And it was fascinating. I was almost hooked immediately to this. idea or the sounds that people sound like they were just having fun. It looks like, wow, what is this that people are doing where they look like they're just having the time of their lives?
So I first started watching pornography when I was around 9 or 10. I was still in primary school. So it started off being like maybe on the weekends or sometimes before school. And then it turned into almost every day, like in summer times. And that was when I started to realize this is having a negative effect on me because I'm doing this way too often, like way too often. And I would say that realization really came when I was about 13, 14, where I was like, oh, this doesn't feel like exploration anymore. This feels like dependency.
I think for me, it was just like more casual, like exploration. I didn't like have any certain like go-to things. I was just like curious what people was doing, and the more weird stuff you find, the more weird stuff you find.
Absolutely.
So it was kind of like that.
Yeah.
But I sort of like dipped in and out. I was probably starting to question things at the age of like 12, 13, and really starting to look more into what actually was sex. Obviously we know what porn is now, but even at that time, I think it was like a little bit different. And I think the beauty standards were very specific about thinness. It's like, I think Hugh Hefner used to call it like tits on a stick. And I'm not really built like that. And so it was a lot of comparison and that kind of stuff. But then it was all a performance, but you don't know that then.
Porn distorts your image of sex, of women, of real life relationships. So I think I became very complacent. I just thought sex would solve most issues. It did for a while, until you realize people want way more than just sex. It's not enough to sustain a relationship.
I didn't have my first like sexual experience, well, proper sexual experience, until I was about 14, 15, and then I like lost my virginity when I was 18. And that, like, losing my virginity your first time, that's like so romanticized, was so terrible.
Yeah.
Like so disappointing. It never felt like real life matched up to the high that I got or the satisfaction that I got from watching pornography or masturbating. I think pornography had set a lot of unrealistic expectations for me of what sex was, and it didn't live up to the fantasy I'd created in my mind. My first time's gonna be like this, and it's gonna feel like this, and I'm gonna be screaming like this, and I'm gonna be flipping like that. It was nothing like that.
Over half of the young people who responded to a survey agree that viewing online pornography could affect behaviour. The research correlates porn use with the potential for real-life aggression and coercion. When the research was published, the Children's Commissioner for England said that she was deeply concerned about sexual violence in porn.
So did you think it was real too then? Like, because when I first found porn, you're like a kid. It's like, this is what it is.
Literally.
This answers the question. This is what everyone is doing. This is the thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think when you're a young mind, that's just what you think. You
Yeah,
think
you're very
that what
impressionable.
Yeah, and you just think like you said, this is what it is. And then you get older and you're like, no, it's not. Like, it's not as perfectly lit. It's not as cute. It's not as seamless. It's not as neat.
He's not going to last for so long.
He's not going to last for so long.
I expected sex to not be about me. That I expected it to be about like my partner, probably like a man. I didn't expect it to feel good. You know, porn doesn't end in a female orgasm, it ends in a male orgasm. And I just was like, oh, well, that's what it is. I think it did play out in my first sexual experience because I wasn't there. I wasn't enjoying it. I was worried about what I look like, what I was supposed to be doing, and am I any good, because I don't know. And then I just felt really sad and sort of empty, that I must have missed something, but I didn't know what I had missed.
One thing, I don't know whether you found this, but when you watch porn for such a long time, it's hard to be present. Sometimes your mind can just start escaping into other things, and you really have to teach your brain to come back into the moment.
When I was watching it, watching porn for the whole day, I realized there was an issue, and I had no energy to do anything. I didn't want to play football, and I just wanted to be inside. But there was the guilt and the shame that came with it. And no matter what I wanted to do, or no matter what I tried to do, I could not stop watching it. That's when I knew there was something up. I knew there was something up when I kept chasing this constant high over and over and over again. But as I became older, I realized, wait, there's something actually wrong here. It's almost in some ways it felt like it was beyond my control.
I used pornography to really medicate a lot of the emotions that I had towards my childhood, towards the pressures that I was feeling at the time, social pressures, educational pressures, familial pressures. I had a conversation with a friend actually who was like, masturbation is actually really good for you. Like, orgasms are good, they relieve a lot of stress. And so that was then my entry point into, okay, cool, I need something to relieve that stress. And I ended up masturbating from like the age of 15. If you're looking for sexual empowerment, which I think every person, especially women, need to have, where you can say, this is what I like, this is what I want, this is how I want to be satisfied, I do actually want to experience sexual pleasure, I don't think that education and that power completely comes from pornography. And I think sometimes it's sold to us that way.
I used to watch it morning, noon and night, pretty much, to the point where I was just exhausted, as you could imagine why.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's when I realized it was actually an addiction. But also, when I spoke to my friends about it, we all spoke about how we wanted to quit.
Not everyone who uses porn habitually would describe themselves as addicted, and porn addiction is not officially recognised as a formal diagnosis. Some mental health practitioners treat problematic porn use as a compulsive sexual behaviour disorder.
I always say the opposite of addiction is connection.
Yeah.
That is so good. Yeah. I'm gonna steal that.
I don't know that I was necessarily like ever addicted to pornography. I don't know if I would ever say that, because it just have sort of like dipped in and out and dribs and drabs throughout my life.
Yeah.
So, and I can see that I'm doing this stuff and then sort of pull myself out of it. And it really is just as simple as like sharing it a lot of the time, isn't it? And just like letting somebody know, because then it just takes the shame and the self-judgment right out of it.
Because I think a lot of it actually is the shame and the secrecy and, oh my gosh, no one else does this. This is so embarrassing. What are people going to think of me? No one would ever think that I would do something like this. And so it was just, I turned to my best friend and was like, got a confession. Like, I watch pornography, I really want to stop. And it opened up this whole kind of worms with different people around, like, oh my gosh, me too. And I was like, wait, we all have the same secret. That's crazy. I realized I had an addiction when I got to university and I tried to take a step back from pornography. I realized that this wasn't something that I wanted to do anymore, that it had become an unhealthy dependency. And I always tell people, if you want to know whether porn is just something you do for recreational time or whether you have an unhealthy dependency on it, try to stop. I would always find myself fighting, like there was this internal battle, internal conflict around whether I could actually stop and whether I wanted to, and it would literally just leave me feeling so powerless. For me personally, I stopped watching pornography when I was about 19, 20.
Wow.
And then, ended up just going on like an abstinence journey and was just like, I need to really reframe how I see sex. We all can start to think that when you watch pornography so much, you can start to think that like sex is just this need that always needs to be satisfied. Your sexual desire and that urge is what you were saying about the surfing the urge or urge surfing.
Well, some people say you're not horny, you need a hug.
Yeah, or like you just need some other kind of dopamine kick, like go to the gym, go
there
for
you
a
go.
run, go and talk to people.
But then when you go to the gym, you get more horny.
Interest in voluntary or intentional celibacy, which is when you choose to abstain from sex, could be on the rise. The celibacy hashtag has gained more than 195 million views and counting on TikTok.
Sex is great. It really is, and it's special. And for me, I have to redefine what it actually means to me. I actually wanted to be safe. I wanted to feel seen. I wanted to feel loved. I wanted to be with someone who I could do that learning with, right? Because I was not a porn star and I wasn't expecting to be with one. I wanted to be with someone who was okay with that. And it wasn't just about the sex, it was actually about the intimacy. And I realized that you can't really cultivate that relationship with every single person. And so I was just like, you know what? In order to no longer see men as objects or people as sexual objects when we first start dating or first start talking. And so I just decided to take sex off the table.
How has porn obsession affected this lot when it comes to their relationships?
I think the lie that we've been fed is that if you have great sexual connection, you have most of what's needed in a relationship to make a relationship work, which actually is not true. Like you just described, relationships are so much more than just sex. It's, especially if you're talking about long-term relationships.
I personally would forego sex for a great connection. And when I was younger, of course, I wouldn't say that, but I've realized if the sex becomes great, fantastic. If it doesn't, then I kind of can look past it. If the person that I'm with, I want to be with for the rest of my life, then personally I could look past it. But it's also because I understand as you get older, your priorities change. I think now I've got a far more realistic view on relationships.
Personally, for me, I think it's a great filtering process, and I think it has led to more fulfilling, connecting relationships in general. And it has meant that sex, for me, has not been the bedrock of this entire relationship. Like, we actually have to connect as people. Do I even like you? Do I like the way you deal with situations? Is there like a friendship here before there is a sexual connection?
Looking back, the impact that porn and masturbation had on my relationships was there was a fear of commitment, for sure. And I felt as if whatever I wanted, I could get, where I could pick somebody up and drop them whenever I wanted. I was prolifically cheating, for sure. And I had no remorse. I did not care.
How about you? How do you feel like pornography affected your sex life?
Well, I had some sort of like other things going on in my life with like addiction. My mom got really sick when I was really young. So there was like loads of other kind of contributing factors, but I ended up getting into relationships with like typically older men who were typically not very nice. And it was just me replaying this dynamic that I was really used to and familiar with, like almost like what you were saying, you just get comfortable, like, and I was comfortable just performing, doing whatever I felt like I was kind of like supposed to do. And it took me like a long time to realize that it was supposed to be like mutual. Do you know what I mean? Like, I couldn't even really get there in my head for a really long time. I don't think I had the revelation that sex could be good for me as well until probably after another relationship and then divorce in my 30s. And then I was like, okay, maybe I can enjoy this too. Maybe this can be for me, and maybe I can try to let go finally of some of this like very internalized shame about the whole thing.
So is it possible to have a healthy relationship with porn? One study by the University of Montreal indicates that certain groups of young adults who took part in the research reported improved sexual satisfaction when using romantic pornography.
Then I did turn to porn again as a way to help me discover that part of myself, but I did it in a very different way than what I did the first time. I watched like sex toy reviews to kind of get an idea of like, okay, what are other women like looking for in like toys and what do they like? And I found audio porn, which I found so interesting and so helpful because nothing was being depicted to me. It gave me a chance to allow myself to go into that headspace and to just think.
Cece, Sean and Courtney have really opened up about a topic that must be difficult, and they're living proof that there is life and even sex after porn obsession.
Giving up porn is probably one of the best decisions I've ever made. The addiction made me lose connections, and now I'm trying to be connected to people that I genuinely love and I really care about. I can't speak for other people, but for me, porn, definitely the negatives far outweigh the pros.
Having those conversations more openly will allow people to realize, one, I'm not the only person, so I don't need to be feeling this like guilt and like need to really hide this thing because I'm actually not the only one who watches pornography or does this thing. But also it allows them to actually start talking about why and start talking about what they may need and how they feel towards it as well, because there are some people who are like, yeah, I watch pornography, I actually really enjoy it, it's great. And then there are some people who are like, I watch it, but I don't want to watch it anymore. And then you actually start to get people the help or the support that they may actually need.
I would say if people are really struggling with porn, find something bigger than yourself that allows you to stop. If you really care about your partner, your kids, or whoever it might be, or if you want to change your life, change it.
If you've been affected by some of the issues raised in this film, details of help and support are available at bbc.co.uk/actionline.